Hi, thank you for joining me. My name is Pamela. I'm a professional furniture refinisher and artist here in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I am going to use this table here for our class. What we're going to do today is we are going to take this table from its original finish and we are going to refinish it in a beautiful paint color. So, first things we're going to do is go ahead and get this all cleaned up before we start working on it. I'll see you then. Okay, let's talk about what we're going to use to clean this table. There are two solutions that I use to clean furniture, and one of them is called Crud Cutter, which is absolutely fantastic for refinishing furniture and cleaning it up. And if you don't have it or can't get it, you can make your own solution, which works out just as good. And what I have here is my own solution. I did a 1:1 ratio, and we did some alcohol and water. So what we're going to do here is go ahead and start cleaning our table. Now what I'm using is just a rag I got at the dollar store. You don't have to go crazy. You can also use paper towels. That works out just as good. And so we're going to clean and wipe down every single inch of this table. And you want to do the same thing with your furniture. It doesn't matter what it is that you're refinishing. You always wanted to give it a nice, good clean. Okay. All right, so now that you wipe down your entire piece of furniture, whatever that is, we're going to go ahead and let this dry. And then when it's done drying, we are going to start sanding. I'll see you there. Okay, welcome back. Now that we got our furniture all cleaned up, we're ready to sand. So before we begin, I just want to go over a few things in regards to sanding. So for today's class or demonstration, I am working with the Surf Prep sander. This sander is great. It's a square here. It's got a lot of cushion, so it's great for contouring. So if you've got furniture with those edges and any kind of details and scroll work, I highly recommend this. They are on the pricier side, so if this is something that you're just doing here or there, depending on the size of your furniture that you want to refinish, you can use a DeWalt or a sand block, whatever works for you. But for today, I am using the electric orbital sander. And the grit I am using is 180. Now, what you want to do is do a little sand test and see how easy the finish lifts. If it's a little bit stubborn, you might want to do 120 grit. If it's lifting easy, then you could probably get away with a 150. Now, when you're painting furniture, you don't have to necessarily strip it all the way down to the wood, but you do want to make sure that you take care of all of your repairs at this point. So if you have nicks or dinks and you got to use some wood filler, now's the time to do this. Let it dry and then start sanding. In this case, we don't have any repairs, so I'm going to go ahead and start sanding around the edges so you can see what this looks like. This is hooked up to a hose and a shop vac, so it takes all that dust and it sucks it in. When I turn this on, it gets pretty loud, so you won't be able to hear me speak, but at least you'll be able to see how far we're going to sand this down and what it'll look like. All right, let's begin. Okay, now that you got your furniture sanded down, before we move on to the next step, what we want to do is go back and clean our furniture again. This is a very important step. You never want to lay primer or paint on top of your furniture when it's dirty, when you have all the dust and grime on there, because if you do that, then it will cause your finish to lift much more quickly. So we definitely don't want to do that. For reference, I'm using the same solution as before. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it a nice, good wipe. Okay, we're going to let this dry, and when it's finished, we're going to move on to the priming stages. I'll see you there. So as you can see, it is scuffed up nice and good. I'm very happy with how it lifted. So I feel like once this is done drying, we can start the priming. Hi, so we made it to our priming stage. Before we go through the application, I just want to go over a few tips and go over the type of primer I'll be using for this project and some safety measures. So I've tried a lot of products over the years, guys. With that being said, one of my absolute favorite primers is by Zinsser. And this is an oil-based primer. It's cover stain primer. It's a stain blocker. It's a bond coater. I mean, it's fantastic. It works well with oil paints, water-based paints, acrylic, water-based acrylic paints, and urethane-based paints. So it's pretty versatile, which I love. Now you can get this in a gallon, and you can apply your furniture by brush and by roller. If you do go this route, you have two options. You can either you can either use a cleaner to clean your brushes and your rollers when you're done. And I use mineral spirits, so that's great. If you don't want to go that route, also, if you don't use the cleaner, then you could just dispose of them. But you have to clean them if you want to reuse them. Now, if you decide you don't want to go that route, they offer professional spray primer. You can get it in a can. This has been a lifesaver for me throughout the years. It's made the process so much easier. But when you do use this, you want to make sure you're in a good ventilated area, or you wear a respirator or a mask. But definitely protect yourself because these fumes are strong. In addition to, if you decide to use the gallon and roll it on, you still have fumes there, but it's not, it doesn't, spray in front of you. So, but it still smells. Now, they do offer in the gallon, they do offer this with it not smelling so much, but it's definitely pricier. The products that I'm using are on the pricier side. I've used all tiers of paints, and I have to tell you, the products that I use by Benmar are my absolute favorite. I love getting my materials at Spectrum Paint. I also shop around at Lowe's and Dollar General because, girl loves a deal. So with that being said, we are going to go on to the priming application. You do want to follow the directions on the can because you want to avoid any drips, and you want to make sure it's shaked really well so it doesn't come out all weird, right? You want it to have a nice, even application. No running, no dripping, none of that. Now, if that does happen, don't worry about that. You can always fix that. Once it dries, you can go back, sand it, and then you can spray another coat on there, and then you let that dry before you go into painting. So it's not a disaster if that happens. It just, you're just taking a step back and just redoing that part before you go on to your paint. So with that being said, we are going to move on to the application. I will be wearing a respirator, so I won't be talking throughout all this, and I'll be spraying the entire thing. Depending on your location, your humidity, and the temperature, will all depend on how fast that dries. Typically, you can start to finish within a couple hours, but I actually always like to wait to start my finish the very next day, just giving that extra 24 hours for it to fully cure. It makes me feel better, All right, so let's start our priming application. I will see you there. Here's a little quick side note of the actual respirator I will be using. You can get one of these at any of your local hardware stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, Spectrum Paint, anywhere where they sell paint, you got a respirator. All right, let's begin. Okay, so we've got this primed. We're gonna let this dry and we'll come back tomorrow and we're gonna talk about all things paint. I am going to share with you about the paint that I use, why I use it, and pick out a color and start our finish. So I will see you there. Hi guys, welcome back. We are going to talk about paint today. So the first thing I'm going to do is start by demonstrating a couple ways we can do this. There's three applications, three ways you can go about painting your furniture. You can paint it by brush, you can paint it by roller, or you can paint it by sprayer. I have a little station here set up and I'm going to walk you through the brushes, the rollers, and the sprayer. And then when we're done, I will meet you over and we will start the application. I'll see you there out and I'm going to walk you through and show you what each step looks like. So let's start with our rollers. I have two rollers aside here, okay, a long one and a short one, and two different rollers. This one is a microfiber. It is great for painting furniture. It does not leave any lines as long as you're applying the right kind of pressure. The next one that I have here, this is a foam roller. And you can see it's only about 2.5 inches here, and it's squishy. It's flat at the edge up here and round out here where you connect to your roller. So this one is great if you're working on furniture that has panels or cabinetry. This is an absolute must. And in those situations, what I actually like to do is first outline those divots. If you have panels that are framed out and they're not flat, you can use a brush and kind of outline it first and then go in with the roller. So this one is longer here. We're just going to put this on here just like this. I like this roller for to get into small spaces. I mean, it's been a lifesaver. It is one of my shop favorites. So if you're really into furniture refinishing and you know this is something you want to do a lot more often, then I actually recommend keeping these in stock. All right, so the next thing is we have our brush. Now, if you're painting by brush, I highly recommend investing in a good brush. This one is by Rooster, and I think this is about a 1.5 inch. Now, I do have to say that if you plan on doing your framework, like I just said, you can actually use dollar store brushes and then go over it with this so you have a seamless look. But if you don't plan on rolling at all and you want to just use your brush, then invest in a really good brush. Okay, so we're going to jump over here to our sprayer. I'm going to walk you through everything just in case you decide to go this route so you know how to safely and properly use this. So I'll break it down for you. I'm using the Flexio 25-3500 series. And this one right here is actually the smaller container that comes with the package. This is more geared towards detailing work like trim work and things of that nature. I do use this a lot more than the bigger one. It's lighter and it's easier to move around, but you can use either one that you want. Okay, so this is where we plug everything in, and I'm going to show you how to take the motor apart from the main body here. And so you see here, there's a lever, and what you want to do is push down, and when you push down, you're going to twist it, and it comes right off, right? Easy peasy. So this compartment here, this is what's going to control the amount of spray that comes out and the direction that it comes out in. So you want to twist this off, and when you twist this off, there's 3 pieces all together. So we've got this piece, we have this piece, and we have this piece. And we want to just kind of pop it off, just like that. Okay, and so this is where the paint comes out of here. Okay, and this is how we take it apart when we want to clean it too. And when you do clean it, you want to make sure all the paint is out of here and that this little hole here is nice and clean. There's nothing blocking it. And then when you put this back in, you're just going to, it has little prongs right here, and you're just going to line them up like that. And then we're going to take this and put this back on, and we're going to twist it. Now, you can spray in 2 different directions. You can spray vertically or horizontally, depending on, you know, your furniture and what you're doing. I like to spray horizontally, so I always line it up like that. Okay, and then we're going to twist this off. This container here is what holds the paint, so pretty self-explanatory there. Now, depending on what series you have, some of them, this part comes off, but because this is the smaller one, this is built in, it doesn't come off. So if you're going to use this, definitely don't rip it off. This is where the paint flows through and allows it to come out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is connect this back together. So I'm going to, again, I'm going to twist it, and then you know when it's in, it'll click just like that. And this red button here, this is your on and off. It's going to, obviously, you know, what turns on the machine turns it off. And then in the back here, you can squeeze these 2 little black squares here, and this will pop off, and then that's where you can clean your vent and put in a new liner. And this nozzle up here, this is what controls the pressure of the paint coming out. My general rule of thumb, I usually switch between 4, 5, and 6. That's kind of my jam. And this lever right here, this is, when you squeeze this, this is what's going to allow your paint to come out. Okay, so now that we've gone over every part of this sprayer, we're going to do a quick demonstration, and I'm going to walk you through the rollers and the brushes, and then when we're done with that, we're going to go on to our next steps, and I'm going to show you how to put paint into your sprayer and move on from there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to use my microfiber brush here, or roller, excuse me. And when we do this, we want to have just the right amount of paint on there. So as you can see here, we don't have enough, so we want to add a little bit more. We don't want to oversaturate it either. The key to applying paint is to apply thinner layers as opposed to thicker layers. And look at how nice and smooth that goes on, just like butter. Okay. And then what we're going to do, we're going to do the same thing with our cabinet foam roller. Now this roller can sometimes leave bubbles. And if that happens, what that means is some air got into it, and that's okay. There's a couple ways you can get rid of that. One of the ways is to gently blow on it. Another way you can use is to use a heat gun. But if you do that, just make sure you have proper distance between the gun and your furniture so you don't damage any wood or finish that you have on there. So here we go. And look at that. It gets in those creases right there. So smooth. No streaks, no roller marks. It's amazing. Okay. And then finally we have our rooster brush. Same rule applies here. You want to have a nice amount on there. And we're going to do soft, subtle strokes from top to bottom. And then what this will do will self-level, and you won't have any brush marks there either. And if you find yourself having brush marks, maybe lighten the pressure between you and the brush when you apply it down. Okay, so now that you've seen the demonstrations on the rollers and the brushes and the breakdown of the sprayer, what we're going to do next is learn how to add paint to your spray gun. I will see you there. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to walk you through the process of adding paint to your sprayer. So what I'm using here today is cabinet coat satin urethane acrylic base paint. This paint is absolutely my favorite. It's great for kitchen cabinets. It's great for furniture. It does have a little bit longer drying time, but it's definitely worth it in the end. Now, this paint definitely runs a little bit thicker, so adding a little bit of water to this is going to be crucial because we don't want to have any blockages when the paint comes out, because then that can turn into a mess. So what we're going to do is make sure you shake up your paint nice and good, and then we're going to take the lid off. And I always like to disconnect this. So we're going to push that lever down and pop this off. Now I already have this set up, so I'm not going to be messing with this. And all I'm going to do is twist this off here. Oh, I do want to point out one quick important note. Think about the direction that this will be going in. I always have it facing this way when I paint, because if you're painting down, you want it to go that way, right? If you are painting up, then you want it to be in reverse. So you're going this way, okay? So the direction of this matters, okay? So what I'm going to do now is pour just a little bit of paint in here, probably about, I'm going to do about a quarter. And then what I'm going to do is add a little bit of water. I just use like maybe about an ounce or two at a time. It depends on how much you're putting in here. So just add a tiny bit. And then stir. So we want it to be nice and thin, but we don't want it to be extremely fluid, runny, because then you might have a lot of drips. So if you find yourself adding a little bit too much water to this, then all you need to do is add a little bit more paint. So here's the consistency of it now. And I think I'm going to add just a little bit more paint. Okay. And we're going to mix this nice and good. I'd say stir for maybe about a minute or two. Go clockwise and then counterclockwise. Just make sure it's nice and mixed up. All right, so I'm liking this consistency. It is perfect. So what we're going to do now is put this back on. Make sure everything is nice and tight. And then we are going to twist and lock. Okay, so we've got our paint all set up, and now we are ready to paint our furniture. I will see you there. Hi. All right, let's talk about sanding. when should you sand and what kind of sandpaper should you be using? So right now I have in my hand is a 320 grit sanding block, and I like to use these after we prime our furniture and right before we get into our painting. So if you thought that all the sanding was done after the priming, not yet. So let's talk about the different types of grit of sandpaper. We have three main categories. We have the remover, we have the preparer, and we have the finisher. So how it works is the lower the number on the sandpaper, the coarser the grit, and the higher the number, the finer the grit. And this will dictate throughout your project what to use and what phase. So what you want to do is when you have your primer all dried, you want to use more of a finishing finer grit. You don't want to have any scratches. You just want to even out your surface and make it nice and smooth. So for this part, you want to use 320 and up. Now, sandpaper can go all the way up to 1,000, and it could go all the way down to 40, 50, 60, around there. So what you want to do is lightly buff out your furniture, and then what you want to do after that is clean it all down. Use a little bit of water and some paper towels or a lint-free rag, whatever works for you, but lightly sand that down and then clean that up, and then you'll be ready for your paint finish. So before we get into all that, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the sandpaper. So what I do is, general rule of thumb, I always start with a 120 when I want to start sanding down furniture in the beginning after we clean it, all that. I usually start around 120, and this will all depend on the condition of your furniture. Are you going to be stripping layers that are already on there off, or are you just working with the original finish and you don't have to worry about that? Will you be using stripper, or are you going to sand? So for this class, I didn't have any prior finishes on there, so I was able to use a 220 grit, 120 grit, and have it take down pretty nicely. I will get into more of the stripper content in another course, but for today, I just want to touch basics on the sandpaper for you, and what you should be using and when you should be using it. So general rule of thumb, start with 120 in the beginning when you're preparing. If you are removing additional stuff and you don't want to strip and you are going to go the sandpaper, depending on how heavy that lifts, you may want to go down to 100 and even 80. But when you do go down to those coarser grits, please keep in mind that they are capable of scratching and leaving marks in your wood. So if you plan on staining it, you definitely want to pay more attention to this part than you would if you're going to paint it. All right, so with that being said, we're going to move on, and we are going to lightly buff out our furniture and then go into our paint. I will see you there. Welcome back to the final stage of refinishing our furniture. I'm going to show you what to do in case you nick it or something happens between painting it the first time and before we get it into painting it the second time, and how we troubleshoot that. So I will see you there. Guys, so what I'm using here is 220 grit. And what we're going to do is just lightly buff out the top of this table here. I got two little nicks going on, and I started kind of buffing this out a little bit. So when you do this, you don't want to press hard because the goal is to even it out, right? Because when we nick it, then we have two different levels going on, and you can see the levels once they dry. So the whole point is to even it out and make it flush. And you definitely don't want to scratch it at this point, because then once you apply, the scratches could come through. So it's very important during this stage, if something happens, to use a finer grit. Start with 320 and then move to 220 if you need to. So what I'm going to do is just lightly buff out those two spots, and I'm going to go in a circular motion, kind of like wax on, wax off. And see, I'm just gently massaging that in there. And then I do what I call the finger test to make sure it's nice and smooth and the levels are nice and even there. And I'm going to do the same thing over here on this one right here. Okay. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to lightly buff this top. Okay. So easy peasy, right? So once you're done doing that, just wipe it off, make sure it's nice and clean, and then you are ready for the final stages of paint. For this project, I'm only doing 2 applications of paint. And general rule of thumb, that's all you need. But sometimes you may require a 3rd coat. So let's get to it, and I will see you there for final stages. Well, you made it to the end I am so happy to have done this for you. I really hope that you enjoyed this course. It was beneficial for you, and you learned a lot of things that you can take with you, feeling confident moving forward on future projects. I would love to hear your feedback. Please let me know how this class went. And as always, thanks for watching. God bless.